I also think that one difference is that because of the Leipzig service, which always occupies the last concert position in the festival, this thing takes on a spiritual life. I think Ken is particularly involved with that in terms of creating a spirit with all of us here, singers, the person that delivers the homily in the Leipzig service, the instrumentalists. We all feel like that this is an entity unto itself, and I think that spiritually we would miss it if the Leipzig service wasn't there at the end. A couple memorable moments. There's a couple especially. One concert early on where we did the full music for the Midsummer Night's Dream by Mendelssohn, and we had actors come and we did scenes with the authentic music that Mendelssohn wrote for Midsummer Night's Dream, and I thought that was a fantastic use of other groups in the Valley with the Shenandoah Shakespeare Express back then, American Shakespeare Center now. I just thought that was a great outing. Another thing that goes on here occasionally is we have elder hostels come through, and some of us actually meet with them and serve as teachers. We're not really teachers, they actually teach us. But we talk with them about various aspects of the festival. And one time we were doing Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring, which for the original instrumentation, which is 13 instruments. And so I was to give a session about that piece to the elder hostel. And I brought with me a film excerpt of Martha Graham's company and Martha Graham herself dancing the lead role in Appalachian Spring. And I played the video as part of the discussion, and this one lady was kind of cat-a-cornered from me, and she started crying. And she was just overtaken with watching the film. And I asked her, I said, well what's going on? Do you find this very moving? I was trying to make conversation. And she said, oh no, she said, I knew Martha. And it was so poignant for her to actually watch her friend there and reconsider her career and this piece of music that we were about to play for the Bach Festival. I think that's got to be a highlight for me.
About the Bach Festival.
Well, one of the things for me in the past 10 years since I've been coming here, my life has changed a lot. I've gone from being a single person, in my first job, living on my own after school, to being married and having 2 kids and moving to a different city, leaving this area. And I used to do a lot of different festivals in the summer, travel around a lot, and with my family now, I've really had to change that. I don't have the time to be away from everybody, but this is the one thing I've kept. I decided, even when I got married, I talked to my husband, I said, I have to keep the Bach Festival. And so some years I bring my kids, some years I don't. It depends on what works out and school schedules and stuff like that. But it's important to me to come back here. And it's a chance also, as a parent with small children, you spend a lot of your life running around and not doing your thing. I don't get to play the cello as much as maybe I would like to during the regular year. So to come here and feel like a cellist again, and feel like a musician, and have these great people to play with, it keeps me going. I plan to keep coming back. I'll never beat singing. But
we are the Bach Festival.
Thank you.
Festival. And
I'm Ken Nafziger, and I'm the artistic director and conductor of the festival, and we're now in the midst of working on our 19th season. The way this thing got started in the first place was that I did a similar kind of festival out in Washington State for a good number of years, and about 20 years ago was at a dinner party at which some friends were asking how the festival out there had gone and what they did. And when that conversation sort of got to an end, I noticed that Joe Lapp, who is the former president of EMU, the president at that time, sorry, I keep having this junk in my throat.
Yeah, fine.
You can get rid of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can clear my throat for me. The Joe Lapp, who was the president of EMU at the time, was listening and was taking notes, and when the conversation finished, he said, so what would it take to get a festival like that going here? And within a very short time, several of us put together a proposal that was primarily written by Helen, my wife, along with Scott Hasfeld and Marcia Kaufman, who were on the staff here at the time, and gave it to the president. And in January of that year, he said, let's do one in June. And so between January and June, we had a very short time to mount a significant event in a very short time. It happened, and people were enthusiastic about the festival, and so it's continued really, really strongly for all these 19 years. There are many things. Sorry. There are a few weeks ago I couldn't have spoken at all, so this is good. There are many things about the festival that have been in place from the beginning of, first of all, that it's centered around the music of Bach. Johann Sebastian Bach seems to be the person to whom people in nearly every style of music are attracted. People who are writing classical music since his death in 1750 have paid attention to his work. People in jazz, people in all kinds of folk music from around the world, Africa, Japan, you name it. Everybody has found some connection to the music of Bach. And there seems to be something that is, I don't know if universal is the correct word or not, but something that is so basic to the music of Bach that appeals to people in many different styles. I mean, Bach has even made it into rock tunes, so he's been everywhere. A second thing, excuse me, a second thing about the festival that has been fairly continuous since the beginning is the people who have come to play and to sing. When we started, we drew on a rather small core of people in this particular community in Harrisonburg who would be going all over the state and the area to play in other symphonies, but never had a chance to do much for their own community. And so there was a strong interest in getting something going from that standpoint, and they became the core. Some of them have been with the festival since the very beginning, and they are incredibly wonderful musicians and have formed the core that has stayed constant over the years. And along the way we've added people, really good people from fairly far and wide for being such a small locality. And it's been one of the joys of every Bach festival is getting, one of the joys of every Bach festival is the very first time people get together to rehearse. And it resembles a family reunion in a very good sense of the way, a family reunion in a very good sense of the word, that people are overjoyed to see each other. They want to know what they've been doing in the meantime, and we sort of pick up and take off wherever we left off last summer. There's not much starting over time required every time we do this, and so in some respects the work gets easier because everybody knows what's expected. Another thing that's been fairly constant from the beginning is this let me start that one again. Another thing that's been constant from the beginning has been the idea of pairing Bach with something else, somebody else, some culture, some style, that changes every year. For me, it's a particular goal that nobody should ever be able to say, having attended one Bach festival concert or even a season of Bach festival, that they've done the Bach festival, they don't need to do it again. I want everyone to be different, appealing in a different way, and also for myself, for the players, for the audience, for the singers, to make it difficult to compare festivals and say this one was better than that one or this one was worse than that one, because they are different in nature. And so that's been a particular goal of mine, and I think it's worked fairly well. I'm always intrigued by how many audience members say to me, this is the best festival ever, and they're probably the same ones who said the same thing a year ago, which is cool. Another thing that's been very constant in the festival over these 19 years is the importance that's placed on the locality, that it is a Harrisonburg thing. It's not exported somewhere else. It gets its energy, its funding, its community support here in this area, and draws largely from the local population to have people who sing in the choir, who play in the orchestra. And everybody knows that it's a relatively expensive thing to do arts organizations these days, and the costs aren't going down. We know that, and we have from the beginning had the noon chamber music concerts free to everyone, because it's important to those of us who had the idea in the first place to make sure that there is nobody in the community who is excluded from things just because they can't pay for something. That means that those who can pay are asked to subsidize those who can't, and I think that's the way a community ought to be, that we all make it possible for each other to do things we couldn't do on our own and without the help of other people. So that's been important from the beginning. What else you want to know? There are people who come each year for the first time and say, "Where have I been? How did this festival get going and I didn't know about it?" And it always seems like in any community, especially a small one, good things often seem like they're well-kept secrets. People will drive to Washington, D.C. or Charlottesville or Richmond for events because there's an appeal about going somewhere else in a way that there isn't an appeal about doing something locally in anybody's town, not just Harrisonburg, but just for anybody. And I mean, it's the whole case of the prophet being rejected in his home kind of idea. That we overlook the neighbors we have who do interesting things that are worthy of our attention. Anyway, for people who have never come to the festival before, I think there are a number of things that are non-threatening about the festival that are worth taking into consideration if you haven't been here before. One is that there are the noon concerts, which are of shorter duration, 1 hour in length, and they're free, and they're good places to introduce younger children, not babies but necessarily, but younger children to the world of classical music. They're short, they're interesting, they're well done, and in this era of constant cutting of music education programs in the public schools, somewhere that slack that music is getting these days needs to be taken up. So here's one place. Another thing that's possible for people who have never attended a festival concert before is to sit in on rehearsals. The rehearsals that the orchestra does and that the choir does are open events. You can walk in and listen and leave when you're finished. You won't interrupt anything, and it's this. I actually think that I think that my favorite work of the whole festival is the rehearsal itself, because it's here where you shape how the music is going to be performed. It's here where you get a commonality of the idea about how all of us together are going to perform the music, and